So yeah, you are more than welcome to record it. So anyone seeking permission, I will allow that. So I have no problem with that. So as I was saying, I do have my own business where I do write grants and business plans for organizations. So I always like to tell folks I can't get enough of grant writing. I just enjoy the activity of writing grants a lot. Okay, and just a couple of roles again at the bottom. I am the founder of the Calmese Group. On a couple of websites, and as you can see with my card, help individual businesses either incorporate their business or kind of scale their business to capacity. So we do a lot of business plan writing. We do a lot of grant writings for nonprofits. Again, we do kind of technology, blockchain consulting, website development. And so we're always happy provide training, research, development to for-profits as well as nonprofit businesses also. Most of the training, some of it will be hands-on. Again, I appreciate and would like to thank everyone for filling out the interest form. And again, that helps me design the training so I can definitely cover the areas in which a lot of the new learners have difficulty with in the grant development process. So again, welcome everyone. And we're going to kind of just jump into the training. Just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat or just go ahead and chime in. And at any point, I'll be there to answer your question. It'll be tons of information. So again, I'm glad you are recording it. All the information you see on the screen as far as the presentation decks, different resources and websites, I will provide that after day 2. So I will send that information out in the email. So you will have access to everything that I cover in the training. So again, welcome. So we talked about the grant writing or the grant development process. So we're going to jump into it. So a good question, and just starting with questions, what do you feel is the most challenging part to writing a grant proposal? And again, from the interest survey, again, a lot of you guys are new to the grant writing sector. And so again, we will start with a number of points looking at the definitive approach. So really understand the language of the grant making process, looking at RFPs, letters of intent and letters of inquiry, and seeing how it all kind of gels together. We'll definitely be looking at some useful grant writing tips, focusing a lot on how to get a particular organization grant ready. And so we'll definitely cover that because, again, grant writing, the development process covers a lot of areas. So we'll try, again, to go into those areas and just try to make a lot of those areas pretty much seamlessly known. So we're going to start off. I'll be sharing my screen from time to time and pulling out and going to different documents and going to different websites. So like I said, I am based in the States, but we will definitely get into how to develop a clear and compelling proposal in which you are actually receiving funds for. We'll look at how organizations should look at developing projects into programs and look at how to create those fundable ideas, because oftentimes that's where the process starts with a lot of brainstorming, a lot of ideation, coming up with those ideas and getting those ideas funded into fundable programs. So we'll be definitely looking at some of the challenges. And again, some of the challenges consist of just understanding the process understanding the language, understanding the value of how your budget plays a part in getting successfully funded. Okay, so I'm going to pull out of the presentation real quick, and we're just going to go ahead and just look at some key definitions. So give me 1 second and I'll get that on the screen for you. And again, if you have any questions during the training, feel free to use the chat or just go ahead and chime in. And at any point, I'll go ahead and address your question. So in looking at the grant development process, I like to start with those basic terms because oftentimes you have different funders and grant makers. And so they use pretty much the similar terminology, but it's awful important to understand what that terminology is. So we're just going to look at some of the basic nonprofit grant terminology here. And as we move into further grant systems, again, they will have their own terminology, and we'll definitely look at that. But one of the things we will look at as for a strategy is how to develop a common grant approach. And a common grant approach will actually help the organization get more grants out the door. And so that's always one of the more positive things, because if you can get more grants submitted, then your chances of getting funded is definitely increased. And so on your screen, again, you just see some of the definitions. Of course, organizations in the state have to be 501c3 charity. Of course, in Canada, you need to be a registered charity. And so we'll look at the dynamics of how the grant making process in the States as well as in Canada kind of similar, and some of the dissimilar aspects of it. But in getting grant ready, again, you want to make sure that organization is in compliance at all levels. And so, making sure you're in good standing, making sure that you have an active and participating board. And so here you see a board matrix. With the grant development process, they will oftentimes ask for your list of board of directors. And so with that, just having up-to-date documents is very important. And so it just talks about your board matrix, and then how you actually situate your board. And so you definitely want individuals on any given board to be active and to play a good role in the grant making process. Again, to talk about bylaws, charters, core values is awfully important. Now, one of the things as grant writers, we're not often coming up with our own language, but we're pulling language from their organizations, either their governance or documents that they already have in place. So oftentimes a grant application will ask you for the organization's mission statement. So that's not anything that the grant writer is coming up with. So as you will see in the presentation, we are normally pulling from information. And I always say that you should always be able to write a complete grant just by going to an organization's website and seeing the information. And you should be able to get a good amount of writing done just by pulling from the information off the website. And so you definitely want that transparency and that disclosure on your website, because one thing funders will do, if you submit a grant proposal, funders will see what you have on your actual grant, and they will actually go to your website to make sure that that information is aligned. So you definitely want to pull from the core values. And this is in alphabetical order. So, but data collection, we will talk about data collection when we talk about the evaluative methods, because again, each part of the grant process is equally important. And if, say, for instance, your evaluation is poor, again, that will lessen your chance of getting that grant funded. And so it talks about evaluations. And again, this is just for definitive purposes. But if I have goals, we'll talk about the goals and objectives. And so if I'm proposing that, how am I going to measure that? And so that evaluation will be that systematic collection of information. And that may take the place of a post-test, pre-test, survey, and various, but it has to be systematic. Often organizations should have an evaluation plan in place. So again, what tools and strategies for that systematic collection of information? It talks about focus group. We will talk about fundraising action plans and fundraising plans, because you always want, again, getting that organization grant ready. What steps has the organization taken to increase their chances of getting a grant? So if you have a fundraising committee, naturally they will develop a fundraising plan, and you will have fundraising goals. And so maybe for this year, our fundraising goal is to get $50,000 in grants. And we're going to do that by identifying X amount of grant funders. And so again, this is the process in which at the beginning of the development process, you kind of start ideating and planning. So again, that fundraising plan is awful important. And these are things that you can actually write into the grant. So you can actually communicate with the funder that, yes, we have an active board. We have also developed a fundraising committee, and we have a fundraising plan. And so again, these are the things that will strengthen your chance of getting successfully funded. Now, we move into goals, because it's important to understand goals. And again, these are kind of the overarching statements of your program. So this is two ways. You have organizational goals. So again, it's clear to understand that when a grant asks, what are the organization goals? You don't talk about the programmatic goals. You talk about, if the organization serves, say, 5,000, then our goal is to reach, to serve 5,000 unhoused populations. And so that would be the organization goals. And so the program goals would be those specific goals to those specific programs. So if I have a tutoring program, or if I have an employment program, so those programs would be specific for their program, or those goals would be specific to those programs. We will deal with indicators, because it's important to know what indicators are. And I always say, if you're driving in your car and your gas light comes on, that's an indicator that you pretty much need to go get gas. So those indicators are those measurable markers. And so if I have a reading program, and so and if I want to see if certain goals or objectives are being reached, then one of the indicators could be, first of all, if a participant is actually attending the project. So that's a good indicator that they are at least getting the intervention. So those indicators are those measurable markers or behaviors and conditions that will lead to certain outcomes and know that they are being achieved. Okay, we're going to kind of speed it up. Now, interventions are normally your programs, the things that create the change of behaviors in the individual. So if I'm doing, again, housing programs, my intervention would be those services that move an individual from being homeless to being housed. And so the good thing to remember when you're talking about grant development is the change in that individual that you're trying to accomplish. So it talks about interview, journal log. So a learning organization, again, just having that capacity to maintain and improve performance. We may have time to look at a logic model. Definitely the logic model talks about the inputs that goes into a program. Again, where the individual has a changed behavior. So you're looking at all of those things, and it's like a visual or representation of your program. So you're looking at the resources, you're looking at the activities, and then you're looking at the outcomes that's achieved. So again, these are just the definitions that we're kind of just looking at. Depending on an organization, they may have a marketing or communications plan. And again, that's awful important, because if you are awarded a grant, how will you get this information out to the community? So letting the funder know, well, we have a communications plan where, we send out a newsletter or whatnot, because again, once you do get a grant, you are in partnership with that funder. So mission statement, multi-year operating budget, definitely we'll look at the budget. So definitely one of the good strategies really kind of is to start with the budget. A lot of times, if looking at the budget, you can kind of see what exactly the narrative will be about. And again, these are just some more. We will look at an organizational assessment tool, and I will provide that also. And the organizational assessment tool is really important. So as a grant writer, when I am working with an organization, I use that organizational assessment tool to make sure that organization is grant ready. And so we're going through doing a checklist of different areas, from the leadership to the programmatic staff to the organization. So I will show you an actual assessment tool and how that is used. Now it talks about outcomes. So the outcomes are those measurable things, quantifiable things with a program that you're looking to measure. And when you hear outputs, just think of those concrete items that are produced. So if you're doing say a reading program, and you want your children at the end of the program to develop, say, a journal or a book, so that output would be a tangible item. Okay, and again, it's just some different terminology. We definitely talk about a problem or need statement, because again, oftentimes that's where the grant kind of starts as far as research. What is the problem, or what is the need that you're trying to address? And so we'll look at real case samples of that. And again, if you do have any questions of anything that I'm talking about, go ahead and chime in. So again, questionnaires, we'll talk about data collection instruments as well. So you have questionnaires, you have pre and post tests, you have observational surveys and whatnot. So again, this will be provided as we move. Again, a strategic plan is awful important. So whether you are a nonprofit institution, having a strong strategic plan will increase your chances, because you're telling the funder that in a span of 3 years, here's what we're looking at as far as articulating our goals. Maybe we want to move into different communities, or maybe we want to serve certain populations. So this is our strategic plan. So it tells what the organization is going to do as a whole. Okay, and just some other information. Theory of change is real important. Also, just understanding, you may hear theory of change, or the funder may ask you, what is your organization's theory of change? And when you're looking at that, you're pretty much looking at how an individual behavior is prior to joining your intervention. And your intervention could be a program, it could be educational services, and how coming through that intervention, how that individual will look upon exiting your intervention. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move into the the grant writing cycle. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and chime in. Because
okay, I have a question. Theory of change. Is it what the funder looks out for, or what you do when you get a grant? Is it the outcomes that comes out that what's the whole idea about the theory of change?
so the theory of change
Yeah.
would be a document that a funder would ask, and they will kind of ask for it as an attachment. So if you do have a theory of change, they would like to see what that it's entailed in that theory of change. And again, that is the organization or whatever entity that's applying for that grant. That's their theory of how they will use their interventions to help a client or participant moving through their program. And so it's basically a step by step, and how that individual will look. So if I'm using say a homeless model, an individual may be unhoused and on the street when the organization first touches them or connects with them. And then we move them through a system of programs or interventions. Maybe we provide them with substance use abuse training. Maybe we give them again employment services to have them sustain a job. Maybe we provide mental health treatment and services. So at the end of that program, we can say our theory of change is providing these interventions. We know that we can move an unhoused individual to being sheltered and safely housed for X amount of time. And then on providing follow-up, we know that our intervention is successful because upon follow-up, the individual is still thriving. And so that is all captured in one sheet that's called a theory of change.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the, and again, I know from the surveys that the range of individuals, ranges from new or to individuals that don't have any grant writing experience. And so this is a pretty thorough grant writing cycle, and it kind of shows you the steps you go through in order to develop a successful grant. So again, I always say start with strong research. Whether you are researching your funding opportunities, you want to be able to effectively vet those funding opportunities, because again, time management and efficient use of your time is awful important in the grant writing, and it can be the difference between getting a grant for hundreds of thousands of dollars or missing that opportunity because again, you didn't vet that opportunity. So research as far as the grant, research as far as maybe your interventions, moving into evidence-based practices. So if you look at, it first starts with researching the funds. So again, understanding what those funding purposes and requirements are, because you want to make sure that the services you are providing aligns with the funders. And so if I'm doing a program to again provide, I may just be providing training to my staff and I want to get a grant for that, then I certainly don't want to be writing a grant to a funder that provides services to children, because that wouldn't align as much. The second bullet point, you want to determine the eligibility for the funding. And so we definitely will look at that, because that is how you get a good success rate. My intervention is very aligned with the funder's eligibility. We talked about organization and other informational needs. And so again, early on, determining what does my organization need to move it forward. am I having those poignant discussions with my staff to find out what's needed, with my board of directors, to find out, because given the grant opportunity, you can get funds to help with the weaknesses or the opportunities of your organization. So if you have a board that's not active, or you need to build capacity in your board, then looking at capacity building grants is an awful good way to start. If you have a program and your interventions are pretty minimal, you can write a grant to adopt the evidence-based practice, or build a new program, or bring on more staff. So again, determining what or your organization's needs is real important. Again, is it a new project? Is it an existing project? If it's an existing project, how can I innovate that project? Again, so documenting your initiatives, whether they're past projects, because that, again, just helps attain that realistic funding. So these are just some steps. And if, as you see, it kind of moves across. So once you have your research in place, then you move into developing either a project or your program concept. And here's where you look at, again, conceptualizing your project. And often during this phase, we call that the ideation stage, or where we just brainstorm. So what new programs can we develop to help our organization, again, get more funds, get more money? What are the funders? What is the funding landscape? So post-COVID, we've seen a lot of funds go towards helping organizations sustain their services, retool their organizations, bring on more staff, because again, due to COVID, a lot of organizations either folded or discontinued services. And so there was a lot of grants that help organizations build back up capacity. And so again, just knowing that landscape is awful important. So it talks about project planning, needs assessments, stakeholder assessments. So who are the stakeholders? Again, we will talk about organizational assessment because that's awful important. Again, how are you leveraging past initiatives, successes, and partnerships? So we will talk about partnerships also, and the value of partnerships and helping you get more grant funding. Identifying program areas and priorities based on documented data. So are you looking at the data internally? Do you know who you're serving? Do you know what your outcomes are and how they are affecting the population you are serving? So all of this is important when you're looking at developing either your new project or sustaining an existing project. And so moving into the development or technical grant proposal writing, taking all of that information, now you're setting up the language. So you're technically writing up your concept into a project proposal. So we may start with an outline of sorts. So if I want to do a literacy program, so I know that these are the areas, this is the cohorts or the groups I want to focus on. I want to focus on, let's say, under-resourced, underserved youth residing in a certain community. It talks about grant writing templates and processes. So when you look at the common grant, when we go and get into the common grant application, it's basically 5 steps that we're looking at. And if you understand those 5 steps, it helps you to develop that common grant application. And with that, you pretty much can scale your application to meet foundations as well as government grants. So again, having that solid template in place is important. So again, this is the phase here where you're developing your goals, objectives, and activities. And we'll talk about that. How does your project steps look? Developing management and delivery framework. Who is responsible? Who is the project staff? What experience do they have? And again, having those realistic activities, not trying to save the world, but understanding who is my target market, what types of interventions do they need, and how will I measure those interventions? So again, just some other information. We will talk about creating a project budget, letters of support and documentation. So again, understanding that partnerships are important moving forward. And then finally, in the last phase, phase 4, you have your evaluation and then your submit process. And so again, each phase of the grant development process is important. But the intimate relationship of how you are measuring your goals and your outcomes is very important, because that shows that your intervention is working. And even if it's not working, that's important to understand and realize. So again, designing a project evaluation, having that evaluation template. So if you have an evaluation that's working, using that template, creating that realistic and relevant data collection plan. And again, these are just some few areas here. So pretty much once you understand that, you're off to the final submission of your grant. And we do touch upon the submission process, because again, that's a whole animal in itself. And so now most of the submissions are online, where you have a grant portal. So now you will have to maintain passwords and login information to submit your you do have a few funders who will take a mail-in, and depending on your location, you can hand deliver. But for the most part, most applications are submitted electronically. And then, of course, it's a continuous process. So again, the grant development process is a continuous process that happens week over week, month over month, in order to ensure whatever your entity is, nonprofit, that you are out there getting as many grant opportunities out the door as possible. So it says after this step here, you may go back to the research process or step. But again, if you have a program that is working, you're definitely going to be again, just going back to the development phase and making sure you're getting that project out the door and submitted. So that's just awful important. And I'll just share my screen again. Yeah, that's awful important. So again, you will have this attachment available in the email. Okay, we're going to get back to the presentation here. Okay. So as you can already see, at this point, there may be some challenging parts to writing a grant. Again, as a grant writer, what you want to do is make the process as seamless and as smooth as possible, because you may be going around to different departments trying to get information to build out this grant. They may have work that they have to do and timelines that they have to meet. And so again, there will be a number of challenging parts to actually writing that proposal. Okay, so as we move into more of the training, Looking at what actually is a grant. So that a grant is a way for the government to fund your ideal and your project. And so you're typically providing a service to the public. And so that's why nonprofits are called public benefit companies or corporation. And so again, simply put, a grant is money that typically doesn't have to be paid back, that is given to a person, business, or corporation. And it generally comes from, again, a public, such as a public government, such as federal, state, local governments, or a foundation. So you have public foundations and you have private foundations. And we'll definitely look at that. Now, generally,
Oh,
you will hear
sorry,
grant.
I have a question. Can I go ahead?
Sure.
Okay, so just trying to find out if the grants you get for education is also covered in this, or is it a different process or methodology entirely to write that?
No, the process will be similar, getting education grants, if I
Okay.
understand your question right. So yeah, you generally will have that same process in which you either have a project or some type of intervention that you're writing for. It may be to support your research. It may be to support an educational program, but the funder
Okay.
will want to know what is the need for that program and how will that need benefit them moving forward. And so again, we will look at some different, again, requests for proposals. You may hear them called federal awards, funding requests. So a funding request, they have grants to study wildlife in Saudi Arabia, or these different things, even for educators. So in the States, we generally find out about federal awards through grants.gov. Now, again, in the States, we have federal, state, so there may be actual state grants as well as city grants. And they generally come from the federal level and just kind of funnel down through those individual governments. And you may also see funding opportunity announcement. So today in day two, we'll look at a lot of the government and international grant opportunities. Today we'll look at pretty much doing an overview of understanding the process. Again, understanding the definitive nature of grants and looking at some examples of foundations. So again, public grants are those grants that are generally to government agencies. And these grants can be a lot more tedious. So they want more information. They want more research. It generally involves more writing. So your public grants, they generally range from 15 to 100, and don't let the 100 kind of, you're not writing 100 pages. It's normally the amount of attachments in your application. So they really want to see more attachments. They want to maybe see an audit. Again, dependent on your operational budget, an audit can be a half a ream of paper in itself. And so I always say, you want to build a capacity to do business with the government, because it can cost you money just to do business with the government in itself. So, it can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 in just organizational costs to get a government grant out the door and submit it. Because you're looking at paper, you're looking at staff time, development time. And so, of course, you want your organization in the capacity or at the level to do business with different government entities. But here's the caveat. Most of the sections are pretty much, the information is pretty much the same. So you're looking at, again, they're going to ask for a cover letter, either a title page. They may, yeah, this on here. They may even ask for an abstract. So even if you're looking to conduct a study or just provide again, an evidence-based intervention, they will want an abstract. So, such as for a research paper. Again, your introduction, your need and your program statement, the objectives, the methods. So the methods are, how will you implement that program? What are the project steps? And we'll look at some real case scenarios. Your evaluation, again, your dissemination. So if the government says, okay, I will give you some money, but how will people know that you even got the money and that they can actually come and utilize this service? So an organization or that person would have to have a dissemination plan. So we're going to disseminate this information out into our community. We're going to let our neighbors, we're going to let our constituents know that, hey, we got grant money, or we will be getting grant money to provide these excellent services that you can use. So that's how, dissemination works. Again, budget. And like I said, most of the page count comes from the appendices. And so, you may have, and we'll look at some of the attachments.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Jim.
Yes.
Are there times that you receive grants and you keep quiet? If you're talking about dissemination, is it always that when you get grant for a purpose, whether education or for capacity building and the rest, do you need to announce it? Are there not times that you need to just oh, I've gotten the grant, it's for something internal, I don't have to say it. Is it a must that you must disseminate the information?
Right, and that's a great question. And the answer to that is no. It's not all the time that you would have to announce or disseminate. And this is normally done, this process is normally done when you are looking to go out and get participants for the program. But of course, if you are operating at a desired state, and so if I already got a program and I already got much of my participants, then there wouldn't be a need to go out and disseminate the information or even disclose and again, as a nonprofit, again, everything is public disclosure. But it's not necessary that that organization go out and tell either the community that that they have a grant or anything. So that's not actual requirement in most cases. Yeah. So definitely budget, and again appendices. You actually may have an organizational chart, and so again, day 2 we will definitely look at what are some of those attachments, because again, it can get very, very lengthy. Now, as we move to the private grants, when you look at private grants, you're looking more or so at the foundation grants or foundational grants. And these are the corporate grants, maybe such as now the Honda Foundation, or maybe Walmart Foundation here, or the Target Foundation. So and then a lot of individuals set up foundations, and again, they're called private foundation. So you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then these proposals are a lot less intensive as opposed to government grants. Government grants, you typically should have a team working on a government grant. But with foundational grants, generally an individual can do a private grant. So now you're looking again at a letter proposal, maybe a brief 2 to 5 page grant describing your organization, your community need. And as you see, those areas are, again, both in public and private grants. So you're getting that need statement. You're going to have project goals. You're going to have objectives, project design, methods, evaluations, and a budget. Now, again, one of the goals that organizations should do is to make sure that they have that common grant approach to where they have this information developed to the point where they can now start, getting government grant, because once you get government grants, that's where you get the multi-year requests. So a foundation would provide a grant for a funding period that may be 9 months, it may be 6 months, it may be typically for a whole year. And then it's that one-time funding. And so after that cycle ends, you would have to reapply. Now, the great thing about government grants is that you can achieve multi-year funding. And you get more funding. And so instead of a small grant, say of $25,000, the government says, okay, we see you have the capacity to do a $300,000 grant over the course of 3 years. And so we're going to provide $100,000 each year. And based on, again, if you're meeting objectives, getting your reporting documentation in on time, having a timely spend down of the $100,000. So again, once we get into budgets, we'll talk about how to successfully spend down your grant. Because you don't want to wait till the final quarter and say, oh, we need to get more money out, because it looks like you're not managing the grant and your stewardship, your financial stewardship is kind of sloppy and not planned. So again, you want to be able to say, in month 1, we're spending X amount of dollars. In month 2, we're spending X amount of dollars on these specific line items. And say if we don't have a staff to spend this money on, what is our strategy to get someone in? Because generally, if you're not spending the money down, it will decrease your chances of getting funding for that next year. Okay, so where to start? So in starting out, so I'm new to the grant making process. Where should I start looking for grants? How can I get into the grant development process and find out where these grants are? You want to start with those searchable online databases, and I would definitely cover some of those today. And so one of the things you don't want to do is start paying into a lot of subscriptions. You want to go ahead and do the footwork and find out where are these grant opportunities at, because again, they are public disclosed. So anybody can find, it's just a matter of searching them. Now, when you subscribe to, say, a online database, what they're going to do is charge you for all the footwork. But if you're just starting off, you should want to go ahead and do the footwork, because, of course, if you're doing a search of a grant, you're going to bump into another grant, and then you may be led to another grant. And so before you know it, you have 4 opportunities just based on your grant search. So I always say, go ahead and put in the legwork, because you may come across different opportunities that subscription base hadn't even seen yet. So again, one of the things, you can look on grant makers' websites. So I kind of said this, go ahead and do the legwork yourself. So go ahead and do the search, educational grants within a certain province or within a certain city, and see what's available out there. Kind of do a cold search. Again, don't take cookie cutter or blanket approach when submitting your proposal. And what that really says is, if I do have a grant proposal that I develop, don't just send that grant proposal to anybody when you're writing. You want to make sure that that proposal is aligned with the funders. Yes, I see a question. I'm sorry. I asked you to unmute.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Bukola. I just wanted to ask a question with regards to where we are right now about, searching databases online. Are you saying we should subscribe to like journals or something like that, or you are saying we should just go online to search out, where we can have grant makers?
Right. Yes. Yes. I'm saying the latter. Go ahead and search out yourself. Do not subscribe to those grant databases. Um, go ahead and start developing your own grant database. So if you know that, I'll just say the Honda Foundation is a foundation that aligns with your organization's need, just go ahead and start building your own grant database and do the legwork. So avoid the subscription starting off. Again, it kind of depends, but again, I wouldn't necessarily start getting money out the door first unless I moved into a capacity in which I needed that service, but I would start doing the legwork initially myself. And thank you. That was a great question. Again, it just talks about grant writing should be one of the tools in a fundraising arsenal. Again, make sure you have the right information on the grant maker or grant funder when applying for a grant. And so you'll often hear that term used interchangeably. You'll hear funder, grant funder, or grant maker. Again, these are the entities, the public foundation and the private foundations, which provide the grants. So make sure you have the right information. So oftentimes what a grant writer shouldn't do is look at the last application they submitted and then start from there, because the information on the funder's website may have changed. So you want to go back to the source and make sure that the areas that they funded are still intact. Oftentimes they may change their focus area. They may change their focus areas to research, to actually doing child development programs or COVID research issues. And so you want to always go back and make sure that you have the most up-to-date information on the grant maker or the funder. And like I said, just go ahead and spend that upfront time researching and seeking that grant funder, because it's at the end of the day, it's a relationship, a partnership that you're establishing with that grant maker, and getting your organization grant ready. So we talked about that a little bit. So again, these are just some good grant writing practices here. Following the grant maker's specific instructions. Ask for a realistic amount in your request. And so if you don't know what the funding range is, go ahead and reach out and communicate to the funder. What is typically your funding range? Because you don't want to write for either way. If the grant range is from $5,000 to $10,000, $10,000, you don't want to ask for $25,000 just because you don't know what the funding range is. So again, reading through all the questions and attachments. So these are just really good grant writing practices. Avoiding repetition. Saying more with less is awful important, because now with online submissions, you are submitting your grant online. You're going to have either character limits or page limits. And so you want to make sure you are getting the information, or the information about your organization that you want to get funded you want to make sure that is stated, because you may not have a lot of space to actually write your information in, because again,
A
character
question. Yeah.
and word limits. Yes.
Okay. I think we did like 3 proposals in the last 2 months. And that one is both as about academics, and yeah, we have word limit for that. But my question is about avoiding repetition. But there are some grants that they ask you the same thing 2 different ways.
Yeah.
So how do you do that and still avoid repetition?
Right. And that is. So what you want to avoid doing is having that same narrative or that same the same verbiage that you're using. So they're going to ask it 2 or 3 different ways. So without, again, having the same sentences that you're using, you want to kind of repurpose that 2 or 3 different ways without going outside the scope of what you're doing. And I certainly understand it's like, didn't they ask this question before and they're just asking it in a different way? And so again, you want to make sure when you do, provide an answer to that second or third question, that you avoid it being a cut and copy paste, because that's kind of what they're looking for, that same language, and you're just either cutting and pasting it. But you're going to have to repurpose that narrative in itself. So again, I would just avoid, but yeah, that definitely occurs. They will ask a similar question in a different way, and you'll scratch your head and be like, well, I thought I provided this information already. But again, I would just repurpose that language. And another strategy is, if it is either character limits, you may want to expound on that information that you provided. So again, one of the strategies I use is asking the so what and the why. So if I already provided that information, then I would just kind of dwell a little deeper into it. So I ask, so if I already said I provide educational services to underrepresented communities, and then they ask me that again, I would repurpose it to find out why I provide it, or so what, answering the so what. So again, it will allow me to dwell a little deeper in that question. So I provide the information because we have done a sample survey of the community and found out that our program is is severely needed. So again, I would just look at rephrasing that answer and providing more information, more in depth. So yeah, actual great question. So yeah, address everything that you are asking for. So again, I said one of the great strategies is to start with the budget. Start with what funding needs that you have. So by doing that, everything that's on that budget is guaranteed to be addressed in the narrative or the proposal. So if I need staff salaries, if I need equipment, if I need educational supplies, let's go out and get the cost of those. And now when I'm writing my grant and including all of that information. So everything that I'm asking for is definitely addressed. So again, proofread and double check everything. Have various eyes on your grant proposal. Again, you have to have thick skin, because depending on if you give your paper to if you give your grant to a teacher, they're likely to mark it up as if it was a school assignment. So you got to have thick skin, because individuals are going to pick it apart. But that's what you want, because you want to have a good grant that is understood by not only individuals within your organization, but maybe the volunteers, again, maybe the board of directors. So that's important. And demonstrate transparency as well as be clear about your request. Okay, so we're going to just kind of pick up the speed here. These are just some areas here where you can get, where you can find out where some grants are at. I'm going to provide a resource that provides a awful amount, a ton of grant resources, but definitely we'll look at grants.gov. There are some other grant sites that we'll look at. This instrumental site is very good. Small Biz Trends is very good. Grant Station. You also want to look at entities with money. So what we have seen is that a lot of banking institutions, credit unions, and financial institutions, they release requests for proposals. And so these are generally the institutions that have the money. So if you're looking for foundations, I will start definitely. And again, one of the good strategies is to have someone on the board from a financial institution, because that will, again, increase your chance of either getting a grant from that particular financial institution or just from a financial institution in general. So again, if you do have any questions, just go ahead and just shoot them either through the chat or just chime in. We're going to kind of just keep moving.
Under Grant Station has both banks, government, US government, Canadian government. It encompasses all the grant givers under
Right.
Grant Station. Do we need to search for them individually, or we just go to Grant Station and pick whatever suits our purpose?
Right. And I'll see if that's actually a link. But yeah, you would now again, they would want you to subscribe, but I would just go in and pick the individual, go ahead and search for the individual, because what they would do is provide and I haven't been on today, but what they would provide some of the grant names of grants that's available, but they won't provide the specifics of the grant. So I would take the grant names and like you said, go ahead and search for grants that are aligned with what you're looking for. Let me see if I can find one here. So they got Find Grant Makers. And so they have the US charitable, the US federal. So, you know, depending on, you know, where you're situated, I would definitely again just click on that and go into and you will have to kind of click on over here. And so now they generally have the names of the grant makers. But again, I will find out what the name of that grant maker is, search that grant maker's name, and get additional information. Now, what Grant Station would like for you to do is to subscribe so you can see more of the application. But again, I would go ahead and just do the legwork myself and find out what those individual grant opportunities are, and just kind of use Grant Station as a resource. Great question. And we'll look at some additional resources for grants. Certainly candid.com or I'm sorry, candid.org is an excellent resource for finding grant opportunities. And so let me actually just take a break here, and I'll give me 1 second. I'm going to bring up Gonna share my screen again. And we're gonna kind of look at that. So I'm gonna go into resources here. Look at some grants. Okay. So what you see on your screen basically is grant discovery. So again, from that page that was last on the presentation, the question often becomes, where can I go to find grants? And one of the things you want to do is go to those databases that provide free grant searches for you. So here in the States, this site candid.org is definitely an invaluable site. So if you go to about us, things you can do, and you go over to find funding. And so they bought a lot of grant databases out, but they do the request for proposals. So if you click on that, they're going to provide you with free up to date. And again, take advantage of the search protocols over here. So again, when you're searching for RFPs, you know, these are the specific areas over here. So anywhere from aging to animal welfare on down to conservation, education. And so these are all fundable areas. Housing, human services, mental health. So without checking any of those, we're going to get a comprehensive list of all they have. And so again, they're going to start with arts and culture. And like I said, the great thing about them, they provide up-to-date grant listings, and it's for free. And so we're just going to scroll down to some of them here. Again, some of them are specific to certain states. Some of them are international, and I believe so they don't have a, but, oh, I think I did see it. Yeah, so they have international affairs and development. And so you can specifically just search for that. And of course, if it's an international grant available, when you're searching all, you're going to come across that. So again, these are all the opportunities, and they do a exhaustive list. So let's say I'm searching, and let's see that now we move into athletic and sports, children and youth, community development. So let's look at here. So the James S. McDowell Foundation issues requests of proposals for a civic infrastructure project. So say I'm interested in that, I click on that. They're already kind of telling me they provide, so of course this is, I didn't know it was, but I think McDowell was the Air Force base we had here, but I just so happened to pick on one that was St. Louis based. But as you can see, it provides all the background information on that. And again, Candid is not based in St. Louis. It's it provides grants for all 50 states. So in looking at this, they are providing a total of $200,000, which is available. So they're going to provide 5 to 10 grants of 20,000 to 40,000 will be awarded. Then it's going to talk about eligibility. So again, to be eligible, your organization must be tax exempt. And that's normally the criteria for getting a grant, again, in the States and Canada, because in Canada, they want you to be a registered charity or a registered nonprofit. In the States, they want you to be a tax exempt as defined by the IRS 501c3. Now, in some cases, you can have what's called a fiscal sponsor. So if I don't at the time have my exemption, tax exempt status, and I'm working towards that, again, I could partner with an organization that has that, and they'll become my fiscal sponsor. And the check will go to them. I can write the grant and let them know I have a fiscal sponsor. And then they would just divert the funds to my organization until I'm able to be tax exempt or a registered charity. And they actually provide the link to the complete RFP or request for proposal. So we'll go ahead and just click on it real quick and see. So again, this is all a part of the vetting process. And it's generally how most of the grant opportunities will look. You will research them. You will find a link to the actual opportunity. Once you get on that opportunity, now you're vetting. I'm seeing now, I'm looking to see if what my organization has, does that align with this funder? Am I at the point, or are we interested according to my strategic plan? Or are we interested in doing civic infrastructure? How does that look? Have we had discussions about that? That would certainly help, again, moving forward in applying for this. So again, they have the awards total. They're letting you know we're going to give 5 to 10 grants ranging from that amount. So if this is something that I would like to apply for, then on my grant database that I'm compiling, I'll start putting this information. And in day 2, we'll look at a grant database, and I will actually provide a copy of a grant database that everyone can use and can add grants to. So I would add the grant funder, the James S. McDowell Foundation, the amount of the award. So I'm putting together my grant list. So the due date, of course, August 30th, definitely the time, because if you just put August 30th, some funders have up until 11:59 that day. And some funders have, again, by the end of business close. Without having that information, you're working on so much, you'll forget that. And before you know it, you're thinking that I have up until 11:59 p.m. And then you go on the site and you see, oh, wow, the portal is closed because it was 5:00 p.m. So you want to be clear and make sure you have that all that information down so you don't miss that opportunity. So I would definitely put down, apply to this grant by 5 p.m. But you will want to have this in. One of the good strategies is not waiting till the last minute. So you definitely want to have it in before 5 o'clock. And so again, you want to go ahead and look through the proposal and kind of see what they are providing. You want to look at the criteria. So again, if this is something that as an organization you are looking to do, again, bring people together across diverse geographies, races, and income levels to partner for the first time. So this may be an excellent opportunity. If you haven't created partnerships within your program, maybe that's an opportunity. So I would use this grant to have filled that opportunity. Again, they will have objectives also. They want to, strengthen a collaborative capacity of people from different backgrounds. So if that's one of your goals, maybe you want to increase your diversity, equity, and inclusion. You will let the funder know in this opportunity, and this will serve as a good opportunity to do that. Again, they will have where you apply. You definitely want to look at the FAQs of the funder because that will, again, give you excellent background information. Being definitive, what is the purpose, who is eligible, what types of projects, and so you can kind of start thinking. Now, again, one of the things you definitely want to look at is what is not even what is not the allowable cost, or what that opportunity will not fund. And these are generally across various grant opportunities. Unless you are writing for a fellowship or a scholarship, grants will not fund individuals. Now, they may fund individuals that have a purpose of providing a research or a study to support a greater population, but it's not self-serving. I can't write a grant for Jimmy. I could write a grant if Jimmy is doing research to provide, say, information about a certain demographic to better understand that demographic. And again, we'll look at grants.gov, general operating expenses. So with that, they're just not going to say, we're going to give you a basket of dollars and you can use them in any line item. No, you have to use them specifically for specific line items. And so we'll look at a budget. So you generally have your staff, you may have development, training, you may have consultants as far as your salary, as far as your staff section. And then you may have equipment, supplies. And so these are specific line items. You would typically never see a grant where you are doing a political campaign or activity. They just won't fund that. Fundraisers or capital campaigns, they don't fund that. So if I wanted to do either a fish fry or fundraiser or something like that, I generally can't write a grant to do that because that would be fundraising activity. Anything religious activities, promoting a certain doctrine or whatnot. So it's good to find out what the funder will not fund. And then, because here's the thing, the grant funders, they want you to get the money. They do provide all the answers to getting the money. They will give you all the answers. They will even give you examples to some of the grant questions, just so you can understand, again, types of programs that they funded in the past and how that language looked. So again, how do you actually go about applying for this fund? So like I said, most grant applications are submitted through an online application portal. So again, you will have to have an Excel sheet where you have this login information and your password. And again, the more grants you get, you want to make sure you're documenting what's that username and login, because again, failure to do that, you may start on the application, not properly document your login information, and then you're not able to get back into that online portal. So you definitely wanted to do that. And again, just more information. They actually tell you how the proposals will be evaluated. So again, this is really good information. They let you know when the decisions will be announced. So a lot of funders don't provide a lot of this information. So again, the more disclosures they have, the better it is. What's the typical duration of this grant? So again, most grants will be awarded for 1 to 3 years. So here you have an opportunity where you can get year-over-year funding up to 3 years. Now, can your organization submit multiple proposals? In some cases, they say no, it's only one proposal per organization. Now, in this instance, they say yes, you can submit multiple proposals. So you can get 1 or 2 of these grants. But here's the caveat: each project must have a separate application and meet the eligibility criteria. So again, under that one organization, you may submit 3 applications. So you're knocking out 3 proposals just with one funder. So I would take advantage of that if this suits my organization. Definitely contact information. You want to make sure you document that. So and here's the kind of the point of showing this. As much information you can glean from a funder, it's definitely the better. Okay. Now they ask final as we move off of this, can organizations outside St. Louis apply? And they say yes. So again, they're looking for new ideals outside of the St. Louis region. And again, this just happened to be a grant that I selected that was in St. Louis. One of the best practices, if you identify a grant funder, go ahead and subscribe to their newsletter, because oftentimes that is when you will get notice of that funding opportunity, even before it may hit the request for a proposal site we just came off of. So they may actually send this opportunity to you in the newsletter, and you may have a head start on the opportunity. So again, that's a best practice, because having subscription to their newsletter, which is often free, they will send out that notification that, hey, we got a new grant. Or maybe in the event they didn't get to pass out or disseminate all the money, they may actually create another opportunity and say, hey, we have another call. You can submit another application. And that may not actually make it to that grant listing site. So you definitely want to make sure you subscribe to the newsletter if you are interested in that grant fund. So again, that was just an example. We're going to go and follow another example, but I really wanted to just kind of show. And again, there's tons of information, and it's just not St. Louis. And again, it's various areas depending on, and we'll look at education. So here's some education-based ones. And again, you want to get those ones in which you are eligible for. Some of them are based on certain states, certain locales, and certain provinces. Certain ones have a different application process. So if you look at the Carolyn Watson rural Oakland community, they ask for a letter of intent first. So a letter of intent, we'll look at that, is basically a letter saying that briefly, this is what my organization does. Briefly, this is what we're looking to submit a application for. And if your letter of intent get accepted, then they will invite you to the full application process. So they say, oh, we like what you're proposing. And it's almost like a pre-proposal. So it's good to know if a letter of intent is required. And so again, on your grant database that you're putting together, you'll denote that for this opportunity, again, a letter of intent is required. Here's the deadline, and it's 5:00 p.m. Central Time, and you really want to be cognizant, but you want to get it in way before then, because again, you don't want to wait till 5:00 and find out, oh, I'm in a different time zone, and I'm an hour behind, and I can't submit it. You thinking that it was 5:00 your time zone. So you just want to have much information as possible.
All right, Jimmy, there is a question on the chat, and also to take our 5 or 10 minutes break.
Okay, great.
There is also a question, if you could answer that, and then we could take our 5-10 minutes break.
Okay. So it was a question, do we have any grantors in Saskatchewan? Because I'm seeing the US here. So yeah, we're going to look at some grant opportunities in the provinces in Canada also. Just with these ones are kind of US based, but we're really just looking at the process, and the process is often similar. So we're not really looking at the particular grantor, but more so looking at the process. Once we come back from break, and sometime tonight, we'll look at a couple of grant opportunities also in Canada and look at that process too. So I'll definitely address that. Okay. So again, it's 6:30, so we can go ahead and do a 6:28. We can go ahead and do a 10-minute, you say 10-minute break, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's time we can stretch ourselves and get a 5-10 minutes break so that when we come, we do the last leg for today so that we could. I think I'm taking lots of notes, and I have my questions that I will ask at the end as well. So yeah, we can take a 10 minutes break.
Okay, that sounds great.
Opportunities for those that are sitting that wants to stretch and come back, just like I will do.
Okay, great. So we're going to take a 5 to 10-minute break to go ahead and stretch and get some fresh eyes off the screen, and I'll be back on in 5 to 10 minutes. Thanks again, Dr. Edwards.
Okay, I think it's 10 minutes. Can start.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to resume the day one training for the grant development. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to chime in or use the chat feature.
Okay, you talked about multi-year grants. It's one thing we may want to try our hands on in the next granting cycle. So in terms of multi-year granting, what would you look out for? Like, I would want to leave a legacy of probably having like as an executive assistant, or probably a like contract like a writing consultant as a way of getting continuous granting. Are there things that make part of a multi-year granting, or what else would make up a multi-year granting? Because that's what we want to look out for, so that we can have like for 3 years, so that maybe a new executive that comes will just take a template and run. They don't have to begin to ask for funding.
And so I'm sorry. So your question was how would that look for a multi-year request to bring on?
Yeah, the question is how is a multi-year request different from a one-year request? In terms of items to request for, what are the things you request for that can guarantee you a multi-year request?
Okay, great. And so generally, with that multi-year request, you're looking again to build capacity and move a project to either a program. So with a project, you generally have a limited time funding. And again, that may be anywhere from 1 fiscal year or anywhere less than that. And so with the multi-year request, you're definitely looking at, like what you said, bringing on either additional staffing to be supported year over year for a particular program. So yeah, definitely the funding category you want to kind of concentrate on is building that capacity where you have either that expertise and staff, and again bringing them on year over year for that project. And generally that's where you will get much of your costs in the staff salary line items. And so that's really where you want to, in your multi-year request, look to build. You want to build out those staff positions, as well as build out the staff development and training also, and then have a plan in that either 3-year phase of how you are going to sustain that capacity building, and that would of course be to duplicate those efforts. Certainly apply for that call in the next 3 years. So if it's a year over year funding for 3 years, they're going to fund you for 3 years, and then they may open up that call again for another 3 years. And so again, that should be one of the intended goals. But yeah, definitely you want to look at your more major line items, such as your staff, and even if the funding permits, again, either occupancy So paying the rent for, you know, occupancy support. That way, you know that you will be able to maintain your facility over those 3 years. And so these are some of the major or capital costs that I would use in that multi-year request. Definitely those line items.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, we're going to touch up on the presentation deck and just get a little bit more into the into some grant information. And then we're going to look at some other grant opportunities. I know someone has spoke about grant. Well, the last question was grant opportunities in Saskatchewan. Excuse me. So let me get my screen together. So moving forward, let's see. Okay, so here are some of the mistakes and solutions. And one thing to remember: nonprofits are a business as well as for-profits, and you are in the business of doing whatever your mission is. And so you want to really treat your nonprofit as if it was a business. A lot of people get into nonprofits and think, well, it's just a charity, but you want to go about it as a real business. And so you want to have, these are some of the mistakes on the left. So you definitely want to have that good business plan, because if I'm coming in to write a grant, having a business plan will make that grant development a lot easier, a lot more efficient, because I'm able to take information that's already been developed. You want to definitely have up-to-date budgets that reflect the organization's financial position. Again, we talked about fully vetting funding opportunities. So you want to definitely vet those and ensure that you meet those funder requirements. Not assessing your organization's true value. So you want to identify, and this is most important, all aspects of your nonprofit to reflect the accurate picture. So if you have volunteers, it's a certain rate at which those volunteers, a certain value, a certain rate in which those volunteers have. If you have board of directors just, volunteering, you have to have that true value to write that grant, because once the money come in, you definitely don't want to have the volunteers when you can have paid salary. So at what rate with those volunteers, what would be the market, fair market rate of those volunteers? And just having those records, maintaining good records, great records, and having a established tracking system is very important. So again, of course, when you don't have a clear picture of exactly what you need the funding for before you start out, you would just end up wasting time looking at too many grant opportunities and funders. So be clear as to what you are looking for and have a clear picture of that. So we're going to, again, after we move through this piece, we're going to, again, go and look at some more grant opportunities, more in Canada. So once you confirm your eligibility for a grant, again, do some research. And that's kind of what we did. We researched, we looked in, familiarize yourself with the grant maker and its processes. Find out who to contact if there are any technical questions or you need technical support. This definitely will help you tailor your grant application to those specific opportunities. And it's just, again, some of the vetting questions that you may have. Again, do we meet the basic eligibility requirements? Do we meet the geographic requirements and preferences? Does your work align with the funder's mission and priorities? Would this funding cover a significant enough portion of the funding we need? And so again, understanding the true cost of that project. So if that project is costs $75,000 to operate, it's okay to go ahead and apply for a grant for $50,000, knowing that you would have to apply for another grant of $25,000 or more to fully fund that. So understand how much of that, again, grant will fund that actual project or program. These are just some eligibility questions again, that you need to hone in on. In organizing your proposal, again, we talked about, are there any similar past funding projects? So I always like to call it the Sankofa method. You kind of want to look back to see where you're going to go as far as in the future. So oftentimes when I'm writing grants, I look to see what were some of the past grants written and kind of use that trajectory moving forward. And specifically, how would the funding be spent? And how will you outline each expense? Okay. And of course, keep track of your efforts. Always keep track of your efforts. Again, when you're creating your database, you want the funder's name and contact information. You want the funder priorities and restrictions. So of course, they don't fund individuals and different things. So you want to know that. The amount you plan to request for and for which project. What are the tasks you need to do in advance to applying? So if I need letters of support, then I need to contact my different partners and say, hey, look, I'm going to be interested in going forward with this grant opportunity. I may need a letter of support from you. So keep a heads up, because again, you don't want to wait till the last minute. You want the due dates on that tracking information. You want the date the grant was actually submitted or the proposal was submitted. And you definitely want the result. You want to know if you got funded or if you got rejected. So this is the information you need to track a grant. Now, in writing your grants, as we move into the development, questions that nonprofits should be able to answer when applying for the grant: who do we serve, and who will benefit from this money we're trying to get? So this is your again, your target market. Why should we pursue a particular funding opportunity? So again, that why question. Am I looking to build capacity? Am I looking to sustain services? Are we running into a deficit? Again, how will we measure impact? What evidence-based practices have we adopted? These are questions I certainly would ask and will move to include in the grant. And how well have we achieved organizational readiness to conduct business at either level you're at? So if you're trying to get to the government level, how are we institutionally ready to do this? Do we have everybody on the same page? Do we have our equipment up? If it's bureaucracy to just get a signature signed, that's going to create, some inconsistencies, because you're going to start missing things because certain people can't sign certain things and people are too busy. So we need to all be on the same page and organizationally ready. Tomorrow I'll talk a little bit about the nonprofit life cycles, but we're going to go ahead and move into the types of fundraising. On the surveys, there was some information as far as donors. I'll touch upon that tomorrow, how to go about doing donor-based processes and activities. But for the most part, again, we're looking at applying for government grants and applying for foundation grants. Okay, so we're going to go into the 5-step development process. So here are the 5 sections of the grant application. And again, if you get these steps down, then you really will understand how to create a common grant approach. And these are the things that's included on the common grant approach. The summary of your organization. So here you may have the history of your organization. And again, you're not coming up with a lot of the new information. You're pulling this information from internal documents, business plans, from the website, from brochures and marketing, print media. So you may want even the accomplishments. So oftentimes an organization will have an annual report to the community where they're talking about their successes, their accomplishments. If I have that, then I have the information needed to go ahead and write a good summary of the organization, because in that document, it's going to say, in the past fiscal year, we served X amount of people. We had an operating budget of this amount of money. Here were some of our successes. It will talk about the founding of the organization as such. The second is your problem statement or your need statement. So again, who is your target market and what are the community needs of that target market? Your methods, and that would include your goals, your objectives, your project design, and how you intend to implement it. You may do Zoom. I know a number of organizations that don't have a physical building, but I often tell them, well, you need to get regular programming, year-round programming, because funders are not just going to give you grants for events that you do every month. They want to see regular programming. So what is the implementation of different services that you have? And again, your evaluation plan and your project budget. So in looking at that, your organizational summary, that will require you to discuss your organization's history, the founding and development. So we were incorporated, we were founded. And again, this should be information that you could pull from. What's your organization mission statement? Every grant funder will want to know what is your mission statement, and they will want you to write that out. Your problem or needs, again, this is a condition in which you are trying to change. So what is the need? Is it obesity rates in children that we're trying to change? Is it poor reading scores? Is it lack of educational opportunities for a certain community to make them more employable? Is it unhoused individuals who need interventions, so again, such as substance use treatment, employment services, and rapid rehousing to stabilize them? So remember, the crux of your proposal, you are discussing a condition in which you are trying to change and the group that will be most affected. Okay. And again, your budget. And I always say, think of your budget as told, your project narrative told with numbers. So you should be able to look at a budget and kind of see, and we'll take a couple of look at different budgets. But again, you want to know what are the allowable costs that grant funder will pay for. So here on the screen, you will see here, these are project steps here. So again, when you're looking at either your theory of change or your product steps or project tasks, these are the particular steps that your participant will go through your project. So you may, again, hire staff, train your staff, develop that kind of marketing material. So different flyers, I may engage in my social media to, again, let folks know that I'm recruiting for a certain project. You want to purchase your supplies and equipment. So having these project steps will help you with your grant timeline. And so a lot of grant funders, they will want to see your timeline. So again, if you know the particular steps that you're going to take, it will help you to develop your timeline. And again, these are just some essential project steps here. At some point, you want to start enrolling your participants. You may administer, again, you did a pre-test, you might want to do a midway test. And so you're writing all of this into your grant. And then you want to conduct the final engagement of your program, and then administer the post-test. And then this is, again, how you conduct your project evaluation. And again, these are the steps. And seeing that, a funder will know what they are actually funding. And this just represents here an outline. And again, a good outline, whatever the project is, it's a great way to start ideating and kind of just start seeing where I want to start adding on with my program. So what is the project or program name? For this one is Ready Readers Project. It can be an assessment program. It can be, again, a health and fitness program, or it can be educational awareness. What is the population in which you are going to target? And you want to kind of get really specific in that. So again, for my Ready Readers Project, I want to target 1,000 children, specifically in K through 3rd, attending schools in a particular district. And so if I was doing substance use, again, I may want to target 50 individuals who do not have employment, who may not have housing. And then again, what needs are you addressing? So this is kind of like an outline of your project. And again, what is the timeline, and what you think the total cost would be, or what would your total acts be? Right. Just a little information on developing your budget. And again, definitively, you may hear in-kind contributions. What are in-kind contributions? So again, this generally is donated services or goods that a organization may have. So again, how do you get a true value of your organization? Okay. So on your screen, you have just a general budget. Now, budgets are generally developed, and this is a project budget. So budgets are generally developed for 1 year. And so again, this is an outline budget of some of the line items. So you may have personnel. You definitely may have benefits. So again, if these are items on the budget list that I want to get a grant for, I need to address each of these line items within my narrative. Equipment, supplies, contractual, and other. And you want to make sure that your budget is correct and adds up right. You don't want to fudge the math on that. Now, in developing that budget, those line items, if you can see over to the right, so these would be the particular line items. So generally, if allowable, much of the grant really goes to personnel costs. And so you will see these derived as full-time equivalents. So you may have someone working full-time, again, the benefits, the travel, the equipment. Now, what differentiates equipment from supplies? So equipment are those major costs of items that you will at least keep for 3 years. So if you are asking for a grant for research, maybe you want to get a copier machine. So that would be equipment costs. as opposed to office supplies, which are generally used within the project time period. But something like equipment will generally last at least 3 to 5 years. Again, contractual and other. So again, other may consist of refreshments, marketing, the cost of your evaluation as such. And again, with the budget, include every expense. The last thing the funder hates is surprises. So you want to make sure every reasonable expense is associated with your project is included in that budget. Now, one question someone may ask is, if I get the grant, can I use the grant for expenses before the program started? And that's an emphatic no. You are only required to use those grants during the funding period. So if you had got the grant in January, you can't use the grant to cover costs of your organization in that prior month, December, or that prior quarter. It can only be used for that funding cycle or in that project time period. And the helpful pointer at the bottom, you want to use the funder's desired format. It's when you're submitting a grant, that's not the time to try to flatter them with different colors and pretty fonts and different things like that. That's all fine and dandy in your personal workspace, but you want to make sure you use the funder's desired format. So they may even be particular in saying, well, we want Arial at 12 point. And so you don't want to have a cursive font at 14 point, and that's just going to get your proposal rejected. So use the funder's desired format. So again, it's quite easy for a funder to reject a proposal if you're not including what it takes to move that project. So again, if you're writing for a reading program and you neglect to include the reading materials in the budget or items that's associated with that program, you're going to get rejected. So your budget items should be directly related to your project objectives and outcomes. So we're going to go ahead and stop real quick, and I'm going to look at another grant opportunity here. Give me 1 second to pull it up on my screen. And again, if you have any questions, definitely chime in. I think that's clear. Okay. Okay, so with this opportunity here, so this is the Community Service Recovery Fund. So I'm not sure. And this is a Canadian-based grant opportunity. And so, like I said, one of the things I wanted to do was provide not only US-based foundations and grants, but also take a look at the Canadian-based. And so, again, one of the things I have found in the past is that you will hear the term fund used for grant opportunities as well. So you would have a community service recovery fund, and that would actually be a grant opportunity. So again, of course, in looking at this opportunity, they do have an application form. And so in vetting this application, let me make sure. Okay. And vetting this opportunity, again, you just want to be as thorough as possible. So they got some minor disclaimers, some consent information. They want you to agree to the consented terms. Now, again, they note that if you are a Quebec-based applicant, you may be subject to an M30. So I'm not actually familiar with that, but again, if it is, again, those type of particular things, you want to make note of that if you are a Quebec-based applicant. So again, like I said, whether you are doing a US-based request or a Canadian-based request, pretty much the process is somewhat the same. So they're going to want your organization information. And with this application here, it's more of a online request or an online application. And so one of the best practices is if you are working on an online submission form, you want to work off-site, either on a Word document, so you don't disrupt the integrity of the online application, and you don't want to accidentally submit that application and you were just drafting. So you want to draft off into like a Word document or Google Docs or something like this. So what I normally do, I would just cut and paste these questions onto a Word document. So the first question, they just want general information. How did you hear about the program? So again, the various website, maybe the government of Canada, maybe social media, maybe word of mouth. Again, this kind of serves as kind of like the cover sheet. So they want you to provide contact details and primary contact information. So again, this is information that you will already have, or if you're building this application, go ahead and cut and paste these sections off-site into a Word document. And again, it's simple radio buttons and information where you can just cut and paste your information into the actual document. Again, the legal name of the organization, the common name. They want to know if it's a project collaboration. So again, if not, you will actually just put no. And again, contact information. It's really good for an organization to have that social media presence. So have that website. Again, I should be able to write a grant just by looking at your website alone. It should be that inclusive of all your programs and information. I should be able to go to your Facebook page and pull a number of accomplishments and things that you have done in the past. So you want that activity to be up to date. First of all, you want to be engaged in activity, and you want to be able to promote that activity on your Facebook page, because as a grant writer, I can just look on your Facebook page and say, oh, look, they had a gala back in the spring of 2024. Last year, from their posts, they had X amount of accomplishments. And that's with all of your social media pages. And of course, that's a job in itself, managing and maintaining your social media. So again, that may actually be a grant opportunity to bring in someone to do that. Like I said, this actual opportunity is funded by the government of Canada, the Community Services Recovery Fund. So even with them, they want to see the mission or the mandate of your organization. And I should be able to pull that from your website. So cut and paste to my off-site document. So again, as opposed to the United States-based nonprofit, what type of organization are you running in Canada? Is it a registered charity? Is it a other qualified donee? Is it an incorporated nonprofit? So again, they want to know that. And certainly, is your organization registered federally or provincial or territorially? So again, most would be federally registered, but in some cases it may be provincial. Again, have your up-to-date information so you can easily pull your registration and incorporation number of your organization. Again, you want this on a document and where it's not a barrier to get this information. So they have subsectors. So which of these subsectors best describes your organization? So again, are you education and research based? Are you more social services? Arts and culture? Now, I'm not sure if you are able to know, so you would have to pick one or the other. So again, which one of these best defines your organization? And they have sustainability goals. Again, know your organization. How many full-time staff does your organization currently have? How many part-time staff? Now, again, after the COVID resurgence, a lot of grant questions now have been based on how has your organization pivoted or prepared as a result of COVID. So here's a poignant question here. Describe how your organization, staff, and volunteers and or programs slash services have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, this may be new language. You may not have had this language prior to the pandemic. So again, we call these blurbs. So a blurb is a paragraph or a statement that you can use. And again, they give you a maximum character limit of 900 characters. So again, did you have to cease operations? Did you have to do Zoom calls or remote work from home? So how have your services been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? So again, these are all questions for this opportunity here. And again, if you have this information readily available, then it will certainly make this process a lot less tedious. I see we have a question. Yes, they asked if I could provide a copy of the link. Yes, I will provide. So all the links that I share, I will provide that as well. So again, knowing who you serve, because that could lead to greater funding. If I know in my demographics that 20% of the people I serve are veterans, then it may open up my organization to some veteran funding because we have a significant portion of individuals who are veterans. What's the secondary population you serve? Now, I haven't seen that in a lot of US requests, but again, outside of veterans, what's the second percentage of individuals you serve? Maybe they are indigent, maybe they are senior citizens. And again, what other populations is served or are served by your organization? And again, these are categories, even if you're not serving them, you may want to open up your program services to them and create some type of capacity building. So again, these are just some different populations here. You have children, you have Black Canadians. Again, you have the LGBTQIA plus, different indigenous tribes. So again, knowing who you serve is really important because that can lead, again, to greater funding opportunities. And so, like I said, you have elderly, people suffering from terminal or chronic illnesses. So again, veterans. So if I know that 25% of the populations have served in some military, that may open your program up to a lot of funding. And again, with this being a Canadian request, they want to know the territories or provinces that are served by your organization. And so again, I think someone spoke of Saskatchewan. So again, here is where you will put that.
Yes,
Definitely.
we are based in Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, definitely you would want to, put that. And again, these are the oh, okay. So it was just a question of, yeah, the first generation immigrants and refugees, et cetera, are the populations which that organization serves. So again, that's excellent. And again, that would align with this opportunity here. So yeah, I'll definitely include this. But again, vetting these opportunities as such. And again, it's just really finding the time and the staff to go ahead and go through this opportunity. And that's really the crux of a grant application, is just setting setting aside the time and not trying to do everything in one sitting to avoid burnout or frustration, and taking small chunks at a time and building your actual grant development. And then they ask, what locations does your organization primarily serve? And again, you can check all that apply, but you have to at least check one. So again, these are the locations here. And again, the application like this is not as intensive because again, it's clicking and they're providing all the information there. So again, know what your operating budget is, and your operating budget would definitely translate into what is your annual revenue for your organization. So again, if you're at 500,000 to 1.5 million, you want to know what that is so you can accurately reflect that. And then, like I said, being grant ready is being in compliance. That's really, you want to make sure you have the governance. So they want to know, is your organization in good standing with the Canada Revenue Agency, your provincial registry, or the applicable regulatory body. And if you're not, again, that makes you less grant ready. And that's another step you will need to have in place before you actually apply. So we just had another question. Our revenue is not up to any of the options. So again, with that revenue, if it's not up to any of these options, it would definitely be 49,999 and under. And so it would, if it's less than 50,000, then you would certainly click this one. Oh, okay. So if it's more, so of course, if it's 5 million or more, so again, it should be one of these. It should be one of these.
Sorry, what constitutes revenue? Like in our case, is like donations and dues. Does that constitute the bucket of revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
So your revenue would actually be your fee for service. So if you have a program as a nonprofit, you may actually be able to actually charge on a sliding scale. And that's generally how a nonprofit in the past generated revenue. So if I'm providing dental services, if I'm a nonprofit and I'm providing dental services to my target market, for the ones in my neighborhood, they may not have a copay, or they may only pay 50% of the cost. But again, to sustain services, to pay for my dentist and whatnot, I need some type of payment, but I'm putting it on a sliding scale to my target market. And so anyone outside of Saskatchewan may pay the full price of the dental services. So fee for services is one way you can generate revenue. Again, grants is another way you can generate revenue. donor-based
Maybe
relations.
20,000.
So individual donors and corporate donors is another way to generate revenue. Bequests. So if someone pass and leave stocks, maybe they may leave a building. Again, this is another way you can either generate revenue for your program. And so for that question, if it's up to 1.5 million as far as your annual revenue, so you're definitely at this second point from last. So you at 1.5 to almost 5 million, I'm sorry, 5 million, 4.9 million. So this
1.5
would
million
actually
indeed.
be
Where is the revenue coming
the
from?
section you check for that.
Not 20,000.
Sorry, Madam Bukola, could you mute yourself, please?
Yeah.
We are
Sorry.
hearing.
Yeah, I realize that.
But yeah, that's certainly a great question, because you want to know where your revenue is being derived from. And again, as your program, you would have a forecasted budget moving into the next year. So as we are in the moving towards the fourth quarter of 2024, you want to forecast your budget for fiscal year 2025 and start identifying what would be your annual revenue of your organization. And that's why it's important to have your funding forecast and your fundraising schedule, because if you have already identified several grant opportunities, you can kind of plan to add that to your funding forecast to help with your operating budget for next year. Another question, thanks, Emmanuel. Does the proposed project form part of the operating budget / revenue? So yes, if I understand your question correctly, does the proposed project form part of that operating budget? And yes, and that's another way in which you would get the overall value of the total operating revenue of your organization. So if I have 3 programs, I want to make sure I understand the line item cost of all those programs, because if I have one program and it's at 75, it brings in $75,000. I have another program that brings in $25,000. Right there, I know my organizational budget is somewhere at $100,000. And for those line items, they might not all be the same. Some may have staff, some may have higher equipment costs. Some may be using occupancy costs. But at the end of that cost of those projects, you would add those projects up, and that would help you with your total operating budget for your organization. And of course, you will have your administrative costs that may not be associated with any projects. And so your administration costs will be added on to that to help get a truer value of your organizational costs. So if I know I have 2 programs and those programs cost or the revenue for that is $100,000, and I have other expenses such as HR, the executive director's salary and whatnot. This is pretty much how you get the total expenses for your organization, and also the total revenue of the different sources. Now, your revenue would be all of those income. Yes, and just a quick question they had, can you please send us this link to the grant forms? Yes, I will provide those links in the email. So again, remember the annual revenue is the forecasted amount of money that you're going to get from those different sections. Grant writing. So how many foundations have you identified? And how much of that will translate into money coming into your organization to pay for those expenses that we were talking about. Okay, so they want, again, governance, you want to make sure you are in compliance. And again, that's why grant readiness is important, and making sure that, I am filing my annual, again, in the States, we have annual reporting and taxes and whatnot. Certainly in Canada, they say a good standing with the Canada Revenue Agency. So as we move, they want you to please provide a list of individuals on your board of directors or management committee. So again, a minimum must be a minimum of 3 people. So again, you want to make sure you have that information. And again, some of these questions, 26, does your organization have practices and procedures in place for internal controls and accountability? So again, one of the things you want to be is honest with the grant maker. So again, if you don't have those practices and procedures, it may be an opportunity. This grant may be an opportunity to get those in place. But again, if you do have them in place, that just makes it more grant ready. So again, in vetting this, I would go to the board of directors and say, hey, look, this is an opportunity we're looking at going after. They asking if we have these controls in place, internal controls and accountability. Let's go ahead and start meeting about this and see how we can start having discussions and moving towards this, because not only for this request, it may be additional requests. And again, just having those practices and procedures in place would increase your chances of getting funding, which is what you want to do. As we kind of move towards the end, and it's not as lengthy of an application, but again, they want to know about your bank accounts, data operation. Again, leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. How is your organization implementing those? And now you're getting down to some of your narrative question. And like I said, based on the application, this is more of a government affiliated application. So it's going to be drawn out. It's going to be lengthy. Again, one of the strategies I have is to go ahead and try to digest as much as possible without getting burnt out, working on it in small sections or in chunks. And again, not getting dissuaded because I'm overwhelmed. Excuse me. So they want you to describe how your organization actively brings an equity lens. So again, if this is a statement that isn't on your common grant application, one of the things or practices you should do is start incorporating those questions onto your common grant application, so you don't have to reword this question every time you come up to it again. So you already have that blurb. So when you are faced with this question again, you could just cut and paste that into your grant application. Okay, so again, these are just some groups in that question about DEI, equity deserving groups. And again, it's a pretty simple. And even with all of that information, at this point, now you're getting into the project information. So now we're actually talking about the specific project. What is that particular title? What are the dates? And again, they want you to share the title of your project. What is the start and the end date? And so, of course, if it's a year-round program, your start date would just be at the start of the year, end date at the end of the month. And again, just following directions. They want you to describe your project in 2 sentences. They pretty much walking you through the process. The first sentence should describe what the project will do. So my project will. The second sentence should describe how the project will support your organization to modernize or adapt. And again, pay attention to the character limits. Okay. Now again, project focus areas. Again, which are the following is the primary focus of your project? Are you investing in people? Are you investing in systems and processes? Or are you investing in program and service innovation and redesign? So they're walking you through the process and the whole application. Again, project type. And again, when I'm looking at an application such as this, and if I'm the leadership at an organization, I may see some things on here that I may want to go ahead and do anyway, knowing that it may be fundable in the future, or if I come back to this request in the future, I know that, you know, in the future, if I'm looking to make an investment in equipment, upgrade, IT and digital infrastructure and physical space, I may not be at that point at this point in time, but knowing that I can include that in my notes and in my documents. The same way with developing partnerships and mergers. So again, we talked about project plan and desired results. So again, if you are getting those project steps down, it will make it easier to go ahead and plug those steps into this project plan, because they want you to describe your project's timeline and activities. And that's particularly what we did. We said in month 1, we're going to focus on recruitment. We're going to focus on registering individuals and hiring staff. So again, a good grant will give you those examples. So again, they want you to go either, an example would be from month 1 to month 12. Some of them you can do it in quarters, from month 1 to month 3 to month 4 to month 6 or whatnot. They give you examples of the type of activities. You want to conduct a technology audit and whatnot. So again, having that common grant would make it so much easier to go ahead and complete and develop this section here. So what 36 talks about are your project deliverables. So as a result of this grant, what new tools, new strategies, new approaches that will be developed? And again, project results. And again, these are similar to the US-based requests. So what are the expected program results and how will they support your organization? And so you want to have those candid conversations with, again, your staff, with your leadership, and make sure we are all on the same page and moving forward with the goal of this with this proposal, and saying, how will we modernize our services? How can we again build in new technologies? So they already asked for your mission and your mandate. Now they want to know, describe how this project will help your organization better deliver on that. So again, if whatever the mission is, by adding this project, it will help us better deliver on our mission, because you're giving us more tools, you are enhancing our technology. So we're streamlining the process. We're able to speak to seniors without barriers or whatnot. We're providing tablets to individuals where we can do assessments and not have to be boggled down with paperwork. And it's helping us reach more individuals in a certain community. So how is this project helping your organization to drive its mission, to deliver on that? And again, project oversight, again, ownership. So we already taking ownership for different activities and different roles. We're just putting them in here now. If I'm the grant manager, or if I'm the project coordinator, That's my name, my role, project coordinator. I'm responsible for coordinating the program, making sure, or if I'm the intake specialist. So again, having that information. And like I said, these sections are commonly used. So I would make sure I have a way of saving that information and being able to pull this information when different grant opportunities come available. I know we have about 20 minutes left. We'll definitely be able to go ahead and wrap this up, and then I'll just open the floor up to any questions and whatnot. So again, after the budget, we'll just kind of see what's left with this proposal. But generally, the budget is kind of the last piece. And again, this is your project budget. So you want to detail your project's overall budget. These pretty much the expenses. So again, for that project coordinator, and I don't see if they're not really differentiating between indirect and direct staff, but I would assume they're talking about direct staff as opposed, well, they do have administration. So when you say administration, that's generally your indirect staff. And you may actually have an indirect cost rate somewhere between 10% and 18%. And so if they allow for that indirect cost rate, if I get $100,000 and I have a 10% administration, then I know that $10,000 of that 100,000 will go to my administration, because someone has to cut the checks, someone has to do the HR, someone has to manage the administrative processes. So it's good if they do provide that. So again, your personnel will be your direct staff, your intake coordinator, your program coordinator, any contractors, again, your material and supplies. And so again, you know that your material and supplies are things that will get used up during the course of your grant period. So if it's for a year, things that you will use in that program for a year. Your project equipment, if they allow you to, again, allowable and unallowable, if they allow for project equipment, this may be even an opportunity to retool some of your existing equipment or add equipment that you otherwise wouldn't have had an opportunity or money to purchase. So you may be able to get a copier machine or new technology such as laptops and kind of retool and upgrade your existing technology, or just get new technology altogether. So again, travel expenses, training and events, and again, administration. So, and they will, again, you're going to calculate that total, go ahead and double and triple, run it through your Excel sheet to make sure your calculations are correct. And other funding, this is important here. Do you have other funding sources for this project? And that's why having a funding plan is very, very critical, because it will help you identify other funding sources. So I'm not particularly, I don't know what CSOs are, but that's probably the funding body or the organization. So they are eligible to have co-funding, but it cannot be duplicative funding for the same project.
I think it's civil society organizations.
What was, I'm sorry, what is
Civil society organizations, CSOs.
civil society organizations? Okay, so if, again, they want to avoid and duplicative funding, double funding. So thank you for that bit of information. So as we wrap it up, again, these are just some, again, other questions that's really poignant. Can your project be completed if not funded to the full amount? And that's important. So if I only give you 50%, can you carry out the project? Now you may have to scale your project down 50%. Is that possible? So, you know, you will make that determination. Or do you need 100% of the funds in order to implement that project? So certain projects are like that. If I don't have 100% of the fund, it's just not possible to implement. So that, again, honesty is the best policy in that regard. And again, just more funding information. So I'm going to start wrapping it up here. They talk about financial documents, and again, I was able to learn a lot, but these are the required documents for registered charities and other qualified donees. So again, what was your last annual report? Do you have a donor report? An annual general meeting report? They call it report to stakeholders on activities, such as a newsletter. We have newsletters also, but we have an annual report to our community that an organization provides every year. Your most recent financial statements. So these may be the attachments that you need. So if you see a 47, it says attach the following documents. Now, again, good practice is having a folder either in the cloud or on a shared network in which you have access to those documents, and they're already scanned in. So you have your most recent financial statement. And that's why it's good if you have a financial department or a separate audit, a separate accountant, to make sure they are on the same page and giving you the most recent, up-to-date financial information. Because I've seen organizations not get funded because they still got financial reports from 2022, and it's not up to date and it's not reflective. Okay, so again, these are just attachments here. I'm not going to really go into that, and that's basically the bulk of this information. Besides that, it's just definitions and different schedules. Like I said, you definitely want to go into this to make sure that you're understanding the definitive language of the grantor, to make sure you understand, you know, and it's more the legalese, the legal definitions. So if I don't spend all the money down, the grant funds down, do I have to repay the funds, or, you know, different things like that? So you kind of getting into a lot of specifics. So not going to really go into that, but that's pretty much an overview of that grant. So I'll go ahead and stop the share now. We got about 15 minutes left, and I'll just kind of open the floor up to any questions.
I have my questions, but I will want others that have not participated in questions to ask first before I ask mine. Okay, there is a hand up.
Okay. Yes, James, I see your hand is up. No.
James Obu, go ahead.
The last aspect we touched about the community service recovery fund application. This template, okay, is it just only to fill up the templates and be qualified for any grant you are requesting for, or there are some other write-ups you are going to make up on that?
So the grant template is not for any grant, but again, it's for grants that are aligned with the various programs and services that the organization provides. Now, I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So you want to make sure, if you are kind of backing out and wanting to go after what's called general operating support, these are when you just kind of describe your organization as a whole, inclusive of all your programs. But if you're going for directed funding at specific programs, you want to approach those funders that support those programs and where your mission aligns with theirs.
Okay, just to answer him,
Okay,
whatever you
sorry.
see there, and whatever you see there is all you are going to provide. There's nothing extra outside. Whatever you
Yeah,
see there is what you provide, and
yeah,
that's all for the funding.
yeah, thank you. I get it. Let me get to the second question. Sorry, the first one. We
Okay.
talked about you talked about the criteria from the organization you are seeking a fund from. The criteria you say, so it's better we go to the website that are giving us funds, or we want to request for funds and know what are their necessary requirements they need for us to meet up this thing. Is that the criteria you're talking about?
Yes, yes, you understand me correctly. So yes, you want to go back to their website, look at what their eligible funding criteria or their eligible funding programs that they will provide for. Now, if you don't have those programs, it may be an opportunity to create new programs to go after that funding if it's not outside your mission. So if you're dealing, and I don't know technically the mission of the organization, but if you're doing educational awareness to teens, and the opportunity come to do walking pets or something that has to do with animal rescue, you just don't want to pivot and then say, well, we're doing a program where we're tending to animals. So you want to make sure that funders grant guidelines is aligned with what your mission is. So again, if I go back up in the grant that we just looked at, again, if you're doing senior care or educational to college students, you want to make sure that the grant priorities are aligned with your mission.
Yeah,
And
finally, finally, let me ask one question. Like we run this like Nigerian Canadian Association, we run mostly on most of us are first generation immigrants, okay?
okay, right.
And as a result, what kind of project intervention that you will seek that you will not find it difficult to seek grant based on your expertise in this area?
Right. And it may require doing some research and seeing what programs, given the research, is best aiding new immigrants. Is it the type of maybe it's ESL, English as Second Language programs? Maybe it's helping new immigrants get documents and different things to reach legal status as an immigrant. So I would research and see what type of past projects or what research-based projects would or definitely happen new immigrants now. Or maybe they need help settling into new communities. And so what type of resources can I provide to those new immigrants? To maybe we can do wraparound services or different things like that. So again, I would go and research the type of projects and interventions that greatly benefit new immigrants, and then kind of see if I can implement those in my current structure of programming. And that may even exist, that may even lend itself to childcare. So as new immigrants, as I come into the community, I may need those type of childcare supports as I go out and venture and make myself acclimate myself to this new environment as a new immigrant of that territory. And so I would definitely may need certain, again, wraparound services, educational support, housing support, maybe language barrier supports. And so even if you don't provide those services, and I see Ms. Bukala, you have a question up too. So even if I don't provide those supports, what type of partners can I begin, what kind of partnerships can I begin to forge to help me sustain my program services? So if I don't provide childcare services to new immigrants, maybe I want to partner with someone who does provide that, and then we can kind of do hand referrals and handoffs. There was another question. Go ahead and just chime in.
Yeah, Bukola, please go ahead with your question.
Actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to clarify certain things. I seem to see that there may be a bit of a misunderstanding on the part of some of the participants. From what you just shared the last time, what we went through, I just wanted to let people know that that specifically had to do with a particular funder. What we went through, that not that particular form that they call application form, that not all funding organizations will actually have that. How will I describe it now? That's
It doesn't apply to everybody, right?
it doesn't apply to
To every
all the
funder, yeah. It's not generic.
Right.
It's not generic. That
Okay.
particular funder wanted the application form in that way. It's not all fund providers that the application will follow that same. It might have like almost like how they set it out. Those are the information that most of them will ask for, but they may not actually follow that particular way, that particular one. I think that one you showed us is from, I think it's the Red Cross under the Canadian government or something like that.
Right.
What I saw, not all funders or fund grants or that provide grant will follow that particular
Right.
pattern of application. That was just what I just wanted to put out there.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And that again, that's definitely correct. That was a particular funding, and again from the Canadian Red Cross, and so that may not speak to all programs that you organizations, and yeah, you're certainly correct. That's a good point.
Hey, guys, go ahead.
Good. I have plenty of questions. Now, first of all, I've tried to do this before. And I experienced a lot of challenges when I did them.
Right.
When I tried to do them, they kept on writing back to me and telling me, no, 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 as in they already have people they are funding. I've done this exact thing before.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I can't even get it because I never knew that there was a site where you could go to and then try to click on all these options and then maybe save it as a document and send it to everyone. But I have actually tried to do this before, but I got a news. True, I think eventually the only people that did with us was RBC. They didn't provide so much. They provided just a tiny effect. And I think International Women, I got some other people. So as in tiny, as in those people actually came, they told me that they don't want to do funding. So I don't know, what was the difference? What did I do wrong? That's what I want to know. I want to understand, what did we do wrong? Because it was simple. It's an organization and it's supposed to be a big organization.
Right.
So what did we do wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've had similar, and it could be a number of reasons, and it may not actually depend on the proposal as much as the relationship that your nonprofit has with that funder, and seeing if it may have been something in the past. But I say that to say what I would do is, again, reach out directly to that funder and just have that candid conversation with the grant administrator upon rejection. So if I get a no and I have applied, then I would definitely follow up, because a lot of times funders will not tell you why they decline your application. And so it's incumbent upon that organization to go ahead and reach out and find out, why isn't my organization even getting an interest from your grant funder? No level of funding. You're not funding 25, you're not funding 50%, and you're definitely not funding 100% of my application. So I would ask them, what is it particularly the reason why I'm not getting funded? What are some things moving forward that you suggest that my organization does to better align us and get us in a position to get funding? And it often just comes down to those candid conversations. And then again, that candid conversation can be a moment and a light bulb to that funder to be like, oh, maybe we should take a closer look at this applicant who wants to get it right and may be stuck in a cycle or doing some things that they just don't know they're doing. So having that candid conversation and finding out, is it the relationship that we have? Is it something with my organization as far as governance, leadership, or is it coming down to the grant application specifically as to why I am not getting this funding? And so with that, I can move forward in the next grant cycle to create a stronger narrative, a stronger grant. And I may even include that learning. So I may even say, in the past, we have not received a grant because of X, Y. And I know X, Y, and Z because I've spoken to them. But since time or since learning of that, we have now pivoted and we are doing this. We are having monthly meetings, whatever that case may be. You want to build that into your project to show them, whatever reason that you said we didn't get the funding, I'm telling you that we have transitioned and we have changed and we have implemented, and now this may put us in a better position to actually receive funding. So that's kind of how I would address that. But
Okay,
yeah,
Ugo, just one more question so that we can end this 8 o'clock so that we can end it. And we have tomorrow's session. Just one more question.
Yeah.
then
So
if I can just say, if there are other questions, go ahead. You can email me those questions, and I'll be sure to kind of include that in tomorrow's training, and then that way, you know, I can address any questions that I didn't get to.
okay.
Just wanted to say that.
Okay. Some of the problems I saw was they kept on telling me that they had other people that were sponsoring for the events, and that their pockets were full. Right. And I couldn't understand that, because I want to believe a Black community that has come out. You know, as in they sponsor, I've seen them sponsor 1,001 people.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, when it comes, they kind of ignore us, which doesn't make any sense. I want to ask another very big question. Do we have like a list of all the funding associates we can reach out to? If assuming, because we do immigration services, we do airport pickups, we do picnics, we do Independence Day, we do so many other things. Today we now do folk fest, different other stuff. So I'm asking, as in, do we have opportunities to reach out to people and say, can other people even sponsor us in case we have problems?
You say, can you reach out to additional sponsors?
Additional sponsors, yeah.
Yes. And you're saying you do these other activities to kind of support the organization as far as generating revenue and doing fundraising?
Yes, but the problem is that we do it individually, and that's where the problem comes in. We could actually do it as a group. We do it as a group, but if we had other sponsors and, you know, if we had other people that could come in and actually help,
Right.
it would have been better for us. Because imagine RBC coming out full blown and say, okay, I'm sponsoring this event. It's $100,000 of pain. But they don't trust
I
us
would,
like that. So why?
if you permit me, can I speak, Ugo?
Yes, sure.
The question I will ask is, do you have a strategic plan? Do you have a governance structure? Because those, he talked about internal processes. If you have a governance structure instead of a constitution and a bylaw, if you have a strategic plan that tells people what you want to do in the next 5 years, those shows some level of background work that we have done. That way it gives you as a strong organization out. So they may not fund you totally. They may fund you. So your governance structure will not allow individual to go and do this thing you are doing. It may be a committee. It may be a group. So I think that rather than one of the questions we can take out of here is to say, how do we improve our governance structure? How do we deliberately have a strategic plan 2025 to 2029? That way, if you're handing over to a new organization, a new executive, they ride on with that strategic plan rather than come and drop a new plan. So once you have like a strat plan on your website and a governance structure on your website, those ones are documented because these funders will go to your website, right? And also, is your website, are these activities that you do at the individual, are they regularly updated? Or somebody just does it and the person goes away? You know, all these things lead up to audit trail, because these offenders are interested in audit trail, right? So Folk Fest that is going to come up in next week. Are you going to document like a whole bouquet of pictures for Folk Fest? So those are some of the things that helps improve your chances of getting funding. So it's about something we will do as Nigerians. It's what I wanted to ask him about, how it's something that he has to speak to tomorrow about what we can do to have a strat plan, and that is not your side, but just to speak to its importance in opening tomorrow. That's one of the things I want to add to you, if we can discuss about that. But I think that is very important. If you get your governance structure right and you get your strat plan right, there is a likelihood that you will get funding.
Right, correct, yes. Yes, and I can certainly speak to that more tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah, how, again, how you're saying having everyone on board with a collective mission will increase your chance, and then you're able to better have that funding plan, because again, everyone's on board and it's just not a singular or individual effort, but again, it's more of a team effort, and you're generating that type of inertia and momentum as an organization, moving forward with your individual fundraising activities. So yeah, I'll definitely speak to that tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. It's been a great day. I have learned some things that I will take back to my team. I know some people have taken note on their own. We'll see how we end up tomorrow. Thanks for coming early. It means that we had a robust time. I have one. I don't know about you. We want to thank Jimmy for today, day one. We hope that we'll do it the same time tomorrow and we'll conclude tomorrow's session. Thank you. If there are closing words you can say for today's session.
Yes. Just in closing, I just wanted to reassure everyone that all the information and the links that I did go over, I will provide those in the subsequent email. So make sure everyone does have access to all the information. And like I said, the presentation deck, as well as the resources, I will be providing those. And just also just to remind that if you do have any questions or anything, I'll definitely be looking at the grant writing interest forms that we submitted. And I'll be speaking specifically to a lot of those different points tomorrow. So yeah, I definitely want to thank everyone for their time. I hope it's been a learning experience. And just with grant writing, it's always so much, but I try to make it digestible and palatable because I know it can be overwhelming. We just went through the grant and it was over 17 pages, and it's like, but yeah, I really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you so much.
Okay, thanks everyone. See you tomorrow.
Okay, see you tomorrow. Oh, there was one question. Okay, they just said thank you. All
Yeah,
right.
they are trying to thank you for
All
your
right,
comments.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you
All right,
very
thank you
much.
too.
We
Thank
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye.
have a great evening, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
Do we get this recording?
Sure, we'll share the recording for both.
All right, thank you.
Once we
I'll-
conclude, we'll share both.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.